Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for Thriving in Chaos, How to Lead Teams in Adversity. I'm joined today by Graham Wilson, Leadership Wizard and founder and CEO of Successfactory. I'm Amy Davis, Content Marketing Manager at Reed. Graham is a inspirational developer of leaders and has worked with hundreds of professionals in his time. So I'm sure that you'll all get something out of this webinar today. Just a bit of housekeeping. If you've got any questions, we'll be doing a Q&A session at the end after Graham speaks for about half an hour. So please do use the chat function in the top right-hand side of the screen to put any questions you'd like to ask to Graham, and I will try to get through as many of those as I can at the end of the session. So over to you. Thank you for joining us, Graham, and over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Amy. Pleasure to be with you. I was just chatting to Amy before we went live, and isn't it interesting how in today's world, how fast everything seems to be going? We're just chatting about what day is it, what time it is, and is it morning or afternoon? And I guess you can probably relate to that yourselves in terms of where we're at the moment. And before I share my thoughts and ideas, I just want to share a story with you around the fact that actually when I was growing up, I grew up with my dad. He used to race motorbikes and my uncle used to race cars. And it was really fascinating, obviously being a young boy, growing up with bikes and cars everywhere and going off to different races and different circuits around the UK. And we were just about to start our season this year with the season being delayed. So it's really exciting this weekend. And it was really interesting listening to my dad and my uncle talk after the races. So they go away to different circuits and they come back and they would talk about the race, whether they lost or won or what happened and crashes and things like that. And I used to listen intently. And what was really interesting, over a period of time, a pattern materialized. And the pattern was this, is that every time they lost a race was because they were going too fast. And I thought that was really, really interesting as a young boy and very confusing as well, because I thought surely racing's about having the throttle full on or your foot flat to the floor and it's about going fast. And I think today's world, it's very easy for us to actually get caught up in crisis management and operate at a really fast pace. And we do need to deliver at pace, but sometimes we actually go too fast. So what I learned by that is in order to be effective from a racing point of view, you need to know when to go fast, but you also need to know when to slow down. So slow into a bend and fast out. And all the time they lost or crashed or had accidents or lost a race because they were going too fast. So I think in business, I think it's really useful to use that context, is that we can actually speed up by slowing down. So what I'd like to do over the next 30 minutes is give you a chance just to really slow down a little bit and really think about you as a leader. Think about what is it that you actually do on a day-to-day basis. What is it that you actually do from a behavioral point of view, and what in terms of your actions? Because I always talk about leadership is really about, let me just share my screen here for you. Okay, so you should have a set of slides coming there now. So for me, leadership really is around the behaviors. It's what we do on a day-to-day basis. And what I like to do really is today share with some thoughts and ideas about how we really thrive in our times of chaos. How do we actually lead teams? How do we actually effectively sustain that high performance when we're in times of adversity? And definition of adversity is difficult and unprecedented times. So this session really is about giving you practical tools and techniques, but a chance for you to slow down and really think about what you do from a behavioral point of view. And if you can connect with these ideas, translate that into real actions, then turn those actions into a habitual way of working, then I'll know you'll be really successful. So I'm really fortunate over the last, as Amy said, to work with many different organizations. And what's really great about that is I get a chance to work with some really fantastic leaders. So I'm going to share with you today is lots of ideas from myself, but also from many of the leaders I work with around the world. And it's really fortunate to be trusted by some leading organizations and be able to help develop the leaders. So every time I work with organizations, of course, I learn new stuff as well. So that could be really, really powerful. And you can see from our list of clients we have here is that they're a wide range of different clients from different sectors. So we're not actually sector specific in terms of what we do. So I'm going to share with you lots of ideas and thoughts. Your challenge, of course, is to challenge my thinking, but also to think about how are you going to lead in your way? Because the first thing to recognize when we're leading is that we're all different, we're all human beings, and we need to find a way that works for us using our strengths and capabilities, but also in a way that works for the context you're actually in. So what I'd like to do is share with you really the answers to 3 key questions that will help you to look at how you lead teams effectively. So the first question is, well, why do we need to change? Isn't the way we've been leading okay? What is it that's causing this change, and how do we actually start to think about leadership in a different way? So the first question is to really explore that. We'll go into that in depth in a moment. Second thing is, well, okay, if I do need to change, then what does great leadership really look like in today's world? So I'm really fascinated about what leadership looks like now and in the future. I think it's very easy to actually look at research-based approaches and what worked in the past. What I'm really interested in is, what is it we need to do now, and what we're going to do in the future to be really successful in our leadership aspects. And the final question I'd like to share with you is the key one, which is grounding that down and saying, well, how do we really effectively lead teams in times of adversity? So that's our structure for the day. So we will be sharing these slides with you, and as Amy said, there's going to be a set of questions you can ask at the end of it. So as we go through it, you don't need to actually write down everything on the screen. I'm going to share with you quite a lot of content, ideas and thoughts. What I'd like to do really is for you to perhaps record the golden nuggets, the thing that really connects with you, that you can actually go away and apply. And what I would suggest really at the end of it, because I always say on these webinars, the most important thing is what happens after the webinar. What do you do with the content? So we'll be sharing the slides, the tools with you. Take your notes as you go through there, because writing down notes will actually help to embed that learning as well. But then at the end of it, reflect on it, perhaps go for a walk, get a coffee, get a drink or whatever it is, go for lunch. But then think about, okay, so what have I learned from that? How does that connect with my world? And more importantly, what am I now going to do to actually make a difference? And then just pick 2 or 3 things that you think for you are the easiest things you can do, but will have the most impact for you, and then actually turn those into habits. And once they're into habits, then start to have a look at some of the other tools and techniques. So hopefully that will help with you in terms of getting the most out of our session together. So with so much to share, let's have a look at the start of it and get into the content and have a look at question 1 is, why do we need to change the way we lead? Well, clearly the pandemic and COVID-19 has actually accelerated change. I don't think it's actually caused a change. I think it's just accelerated the fact that we need to lead our organizations in a different way. So it's fair to say, isn't it, that our world is very disruptive, and that's driven a lot by technology. We live in a world where diversity is playing such a massive role. Certainly at the moment, you can see the race equality aspect and equity becoming really, really important in terms of how we operate our organizations, how we design our organizations. And the fact that the artificial intelligence and digital technology is actually driving major changes. So how many of us, for example, have been looking at Zoom conferences and Teams conferences and working virtually and remotely? Well, we've been doing that for a long time, but I think what the present crisis has done is accelerated the need. And thankfully, what that's done, I really hope that's going to do, is to really change organizations for the good. A couple of our clients that have already mentioned today, actually, Siemens have been in the press today saying that they are now mandating that people can work from where they think is the most effective permanently. So if working from home is the best place for you, then work from home. Obviously, from the manufacturing sites, that's slightly different. But I think that's a really great indication of the fact that we are now starting to work in different conditions. And leadership really is contextual, and leading teams is contextual. And you need to understand the context you're in, and then design an environment that really works for you in the best possible way. So this world we live in, example, if you gave to me, you said to me about 6 years ago, let's say, said, Graham, I've got this idea. I'm thinking about selling, T-shirts and gym wear, and I think it's a goer. And what we'll do is we'll get some branded stuff and we'll sell it online. We won't have any shops. We'll just sell it using Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And I think we'll do really well. And it'd be nice to actually get the business to grow a little bit and turn it into a multi-million-pound business. And now, of course, that's one of our clients called Gymshark, and this year they've done 176 million. They're heading up for that 200 million pound turnover with no shops. They're just starting to do a few pop-up shops. They're moving into gyms and they're starting to expand their brand. But it's amazing how the world we live in now is giving us so many opportunities to really think about how we operate more effectively and how we grab these opportunities. And I think that's what leadership is all about, really, this ability to slow down and really think about what we're doing, but grab the opportunity and actually look at ways to innovate. And the word pivot has come out really a lot, hasn't it, in terms of the COVID response. So how do we change our organizations? How do we make them more agile? And I think it's fascinating around if we really understand the context and we understand that what our customers are really struggling with, then we can design solutions that are going to really be helpful for them and really add value. What this does, of course, is it makes our world really confusing. It obviously accelerates the speed we operate with and that desire to actually operate at pace, which is really important. But what it does, it can tend to lead to overwhelm, stress, confusion. What I did in the past doesn't really work anymore. Are there different ways I can operate? The way we used to plan and budget is different these days. We're having to change everything, and it's operating at pace, and it gets really we find a lot of time where wellness is becoming really important now, isn't it? Where we're doing a lot of coaching work with senior people, and they are tired, they are exhausted, and the reason why I believe people are tired and exhausted is because they're still operating with outdated ways of working, and we need to start to look at the way we operate, and that's really what I want to share with you today. And we're now in a world where the pace of change is going so fast, it's actually accelerating exponentially, and it's faster than our ability to keep up with it. So the thing about that, of course, is that when we think about our education, we've actually been educated for a world that doesn't exist anymore. Our ways of thinking, ways of operating. Let me give an example of that. So certainly when I went back to school, and I go back to my school days, if the teacher asked me a question, and if I knew the answer, I'd put my hand up, wouldn't I? And the teacher would then tell me whether I was right or wrong. So if you think about a scenario and you go back to when you were at school and the teacher asked a question, what would have happened if you started to collaborate with your classmates and you got a little group together and you started to use a collaborative approach to solve the problem? What would the teacher have actually said to you? She probably would have said something like, stop talking. That's cheating, and you need to work out the answers yourselves. And by the way, I'll tell you whether you're right or wrong. And I think that's really fascinating from a viewpoint, is that often a lot of us that should be taught in terms of our mindset is that collaboration is actually teamworking is actually cheating. And I think that's quite an interesting concept. So our education system hasn't actually caught up yet with the things that we need. It's getting there, and they're starting to adapt and start to change. And I know, for example, in Finland, they're starting to actually teach regardless of subjects. They don't do subjects anymore. They start to look at actually how we actually teach holistically, which is really important, because the way we model our organizations, of course, is in a way that represents how we were taught at school. So we have subject matter experts as the leads, the directors, the heads of, and we then have these silos where they're now in charge of a particular silo, and you best not talk to each other, because that's actually not right. So we create these hierarchical siloed organizations that represent how we were developed as individuals. Now, of course, in today's world, that just ain't going to cut it anymore. So the context is actually changing. So this is a diagram from McKinsey's, well-known consultancy in this new world, and moving away from this silo mentality that we have around, top-down information. The leaders are the people with all the answers. It's been very interesting is that a lot of our clients, when we talk about what have been the benefits of the crisis for you, and obviously it's been very difficult for a lot of clients, but one of the things they've said is that their old way of succession planning is faulty. So typically what would happen is, if you're really good at your job, if you're a really good manager, then you get identified as a talent opportunity, and you get put on these fast track programs, and then eventually you become a senior leader. And what they've said has been really surprising is that when they look at their talent plans and they look at the crisis when it actually happened, they said it's been remarkable that different people that are not on the talent plan have actually stepped up and become great leaders. And some of the people who were destined for a leadership role actually haven't stepped up. And what's happened, of course, is they identified that most organizations now actually look at a management concept, and most organizations, one of the reasons why we do what we do is that many organizations are overmanaged and underled. So you get these great managers who are actually achieving KPIs and hitting stuff, working in silos, working the system, but they're not actually becoming great leaders. And what we need now, of course, is people who are really fantastic at working in an agile way, fantastic at working in uncertain, complex, ambiguous ways, working in a volatile environment, and can actually lead rather than just manage. We still need management, we still need great managers, but we need great leaders. So when we move away from this bureaucracy, detailed instructions, telling people what to do, silos, into a new world where we need to be more agile, we need to adapt, we need to adopt, we need to pivot, we need to respond to what's happening very, very quickly. We start to look at leadership really as a role of creating a high performance environment where success is inevitable. And it's more about giving direction, autonomy and support. So we're enabling people to be successful. We're not managing people anymore. We're actually enabling people to be successful. And that requires obviously a different set of skills. So the old world managers aren't going to be able to operate in a new way because they've spent so much time micromanaging and telling people what to do and being the subject matter experts and almost like being the teachers. So this is quite interesting, isn't it, when you think about it? It's this context is actually changing. That means we need to look at leadership in a different way. So it's about how we set up teams really, really quickly. So if you don't know how to set up teams, then you're going to really struggle in a new world. So we're going to share with you, as long as you promise not to become a team building consultant, I'll share with you, over 23 years worth of experience and over, I don't know, 60, probably about 75,000 leaders I've developed over the years about how to develop a team really, really quickly and how to then sustain that performance. And what we're doing here now is actually looking at this organization really more as an organism rather than a mechanism. So interesting time. So that's almost like the first thing, really, the reason why we need to change, because in the past, it's all about leading from the top, leading by knowing the answers, telling people what to do, managing, getting stuff done, task orientated, deliverable orientated. Whereas in today's world, it's slightly different. How do you lead in an uncertain world? How do you lead without knowing the answers? How do you lead when we're not really sure where we're going? We're not really sure what we should be doing. So it requires a different mindset, a different approach, and a different way of looking at it. So question number 2 is, okay, we need to change, but what does great leadership look like? So these are my views, my personal views. You obviously have to challenge this and work out what you think is great in your world, and have a think about what I'm saying here and challenge your thinking and have a think about what you think is really right. So in a very complex and ambiguous world, which is changing so fast, I think simplicity is really, really important. So I like to think about leadership as making a really big difference, a positive difference to the world. So leadership for me is all about the impact you have, about making a positive difference, not just to your EBITDA or your profit, but to society. So any great business, of course, is solving problems for their customers and actually helping them to be more successful. So how do we do that? And how do we lead in a way that actually makes a positive difference? So how do you actually do that? Well, you need to understand the context you're in. So if you think about the leadership legacy model that we've created, is the arrow around the outside is the context you're operating with. And then the positive impact or the difference that you make really combines of around how you are yourself, how authentic you are. So it's about being you and striving to be authentic and being really self-aware and aware of the concepts you're operating in and what your strengths are and applying your strengths and being emotionally intelligent in what you do. It's also about being collaborative. So gone are the ways at school where we have to work on our own and come up with the answers ourselves. Is around how we actually engage with people in conversations to actually collaborate, to use that intellectual capital to come up with great solutions in an inclusive way. I always say the inclusion equals commitment. And the final then is how do you become impactful? That's about how you deliver at pace, how you get things done, how you manage change, how you manage projects, how you manage day-to-day activities. So it's still about delivering what we promise and getting results, but it's also about being you and being collaborative as well. And when you look at those 3 areas, that will make you really successful. If that's a model of success, what does that look like practically? And one of the things I've noticed with great leaders is they have the ability to decode a complex situation and make it really simple, but then to actually turn the ways of working into almost like a set of habits. So they'll decode leadership. So we know that we need to be myself, I need to be collaborative, I need to be impactful. So I'll build a toolbox will help me to do that, and tools and techniques that I can use effectively. But then they work out, well, what is it I need to do on a day-to-day basis? And what's the process of leadership in order to be successful? So what we did to decode that and to help you to understand that is we created what we call the leadership flywheel. So we talk about creating momentum. And what this talks about is really, number 1 is understanding the context you're in. What's the purpose of the organization you're working with? What's our vision and what's our values? Understanding all of that, and then starting really at 12 o'clock around leading self. And leading self, of course, is around that legacy aspect of being you, being collaborative, being impactful, understanding who you are, why you do what you do, and how you do it. And then, and only then, once you've got that leading self in place, then you can then start to understand how to build a winning team. So the starting point is you develop your way of leading, be able to articulate your brand, be able to articulate your philosophy, and then have the ability to build teams. And once you have that ability to create a high performance team, you can then collectively create your direction, create your plans, and start to move forward in an agile way. And then you can actually start to communicate as a leader with meaning and intent what we're here to do, and what impact that's about, and why we do what we do, to inspire action. And then we align the system behind that to make sure everything's aligned in the right direction, to make sure we actually achieve success and we're removing the barriers. Because quite often leadership is about storytelling and connecting the dots, but it's also about removing the blockers, removing the barriers for success, and then getting out of the way of your people and let them crack on with it. And then it's about how you gain momentum by this whole process of constantly learning on a regular basis, evaluating ideas, generating new ideas, putting them into practice, and actually looking at how they improve your results. And then around building on your strengths and what you're achieving. And then it's about evolving and innovating and adapting as you go along. And when you create that cycle of operating, it's amazing what you'll actually achieve. And we've created a whole curriculum behind that. And it's what we use to actually teach on our leadership journeys at Successfactory. And hundreds of different ways of actually doing that. So almost like a journey you can go on as a leader to actually develop that. So what does that mean in practice? So when we start to look at question 3, which is the key one that we want to really get into today, in the last sort of 10 minutes or so of our conversation before we get into questions that you may have, is how do I actually put this in action? How do I lead teams in adversity? So it starts really with understanding, well, what does a high performance team look like? Well, again, making things really simple. We believe that a lot of organizations forget about team health. And we don't just mean about energy and vitality, we mean about the relationships you have in the team. And it's very interesting. One of the traps that we all fall into as leaders is it's very easy to get too deliverable focused and not think about the relationships. And what we talk about on our programs is about avoiding the dead body syndrome. And the dead body syndrome is when you focus too much on deliverables that everyone gets burnt out. It's not sustainable. You might have short-term results, but it's not sustainable. And the classic example is you have the one day a year where you go for your away a day. You go away and shoot people and do paintballing, things like that. It just doesn't work like that. Team building and developing your team is an ongoing journey. And if you haven't got a team development plan as part of your overall plan, then you're in big trouble. So how do I get my team from where it is now to a future state, and what is it we need to do to actually improve that is really important. So we talk about team health. We also talk about the elements that make team health. Of course, the arrow again is around the context you're in, and the values, the purpose of the team and things like that. So the first thing in the blue there is around team spirit. So this is all about relationships, understanding strengths, make sure that we actually play to our position, we play to strengths, we're utilizing strengths, we use the intellectual capital we have in our teams, and there's a really good positive team spirit. My first career was in the military, and one of the things that shocked me when I left the military was a lack of care in organizations, and not in all organizations, but typically, and secondly, a lack of pride. You say to someone, what team are you part of, and they sort of mutter under their breath, and there's no pride, there's no badge on their shirt, if you like, for a sporting context, and there's no team spirit in place. So I think it's really important to actually think about, how do I develop team spirit? What is it we need to actually make sure that we are really positive, have lots of energy, and it's really exciting working here. And it's a high performance culture, not just a good culture or a happy culture, because you can have a great culture where people spend a lot of time on relationships, but we then don't perform in terms of performance. So I call it a high performance culture, which is about high challenge and high support. And that's really where we want to get to. The second thing is a team will not be successful unless it's got the right skills in place. So making sure you've got an eclectic group of people with a good set of skills, and their skills are being used to actually deliver what you need to deliver. And also you need to have ways of working. And we need to set those up in terms of our decision-making processes, the way we interact, the way we operate. And once you get all of that working, that's when you get a high performance team. And it's not just a short term, it's a long term concept of actually creating that and then sustaining that high performance. So how do we do that? Well, we know that the foundation, and if you've ever done or read the work by Patrick Lencioni around the 5 dysfunctional team, you'll know the basis of high performance in any team is about the ability to build trust. So once we're getting trust in place, then people are comfortable to say what they think and feel, which means you're going to have a more effective conversation and dialogue and discussion, which means you have healthy conflict, which means you have an inclusive decision-making process, which means you're going to get more commitment and more accountability to get great results. So we know that's important, but that doesn't tell us how to build a team. It just says what we need to have in place for a team to be successful. So what is the journey we need to go on to build these high performance teams? So step one, it's got to start with you as a leader. A lot of leaders will bypass this and expect to have a high performance team without actually doing the work themselves on themselves. So this really is about you. And I'd ask you now, if I was to ask you a question, can you articulate your leadership philosophy? Do you know what your strengths are? Do you know what your weaknesses are? Are you prepared to actually be vulnerable and share those with your team? Will you build a team around you that will compensate for some of those weaknesses and allow you to use your strengths? And if I look at all successful teams we work on, is they've got a good set, and the leader knows what their weaknesses are, knows what their strengths are, but will build a team around them that will support them, enable them to be successful. So when we're actually working with leaders to help them to create their leadership brand and be able to articulate the philosophy, we use this model, which was, it's an adaptation, if you like, of the work by Simon Sinek. And he always says start with why, but I think you need to go a little bit deeper first. Before you get to why, you need to really understand who you are as a person. So this is where the self-awareness journey needs to happen, and understand who you are. And there's lots of tools around there, psychometric techniques, there's feedback sessions, there's all sorts of stuff you can do to really understand who you are as a person. So we like to use Facet 5 and Strengths Profile to have a combination of helping people understand what their personality is, understand what their behavioral profile is, but understand what their strengths are as well. And what that does then is help you understand is, well, how do I now start to create a life that will allow me to build on those strengths and use those strengths in the most effective way? Once you've got that in place, then you can work out what your purpose and your passions are. So why do you do what you do? And obviously, if you're working in an organization, that will be your job role, your job purpose. But also it's important to make sure that you build your passions in there as well to make sure they're being used, because you'll be more effective and more natural in your way of operating when you understand who you are, you're operating to purpose and aligned to your passions. So for me, I run a leadership organization, and I'm passionate about awakening possibility in people to deliver external results. So that's my purpose, that's my passion, and I love doing it. So it's not an effort, it's just something I really love doing and I'm really passionate about. So it really helps to be really effective. And then what you want to do in your context and based on who you are and your purpose is to work out what is it you should be doing in your role. So we've decoded that, and in my books, Leadership Laid Bare and the New Manifesto, we decode leadership down to 10 disciplines. So you need to work out what is your leadership manifesto, what is it you should be doing in your role to be really successful. And then finally, how do you actually do that? So this is where all the tools and techniques you need. So if I need to inspire action, for example, then what tools and techniques do I have to do that? If I need to have really great conversations with people, what is it I need to do in order to have those conversations with people? So what techniques do I need? What tools, and how do I build my toolkit to be successful? So we'll help you to understand that very quickly. So I'm not going to go through this today, but we'll help you to download this. But this is our new leadership manifesto and the 10 disciplines that we believe, or I believe, are things that we need to do as a leader to be successful around creating a high performance environment where success is inevitable. It's around how you awaken possibility with people, how you operate with boldness, speed, and how you actually operate in the most effective way to really get things done, to really make things really sort of simple. You join the dots, you operate with authenticity, you inspire action, you build teams, you innovate, you manage risk, ambiguity, you educate, develop people, you coach, and you deliver at pace. And once you understand that, you can then work out the tools and techniques you need to be successful. So step one is leading self. Step two is how do you set your team up for success? So we use a process called the 6 Ps process, which is something that we've developed over the years. And what we do is you get your team together and you create the right environment where people can speed up by slowing down. And we certainly recommend thinking about the right environment. Sometimes a work environment is not the right place. So getting away from work, getting into nature, finding an environment, and you can do this virtually, of course, as well. And what we do is we actually go through a process for actually agreeing what we call a team canvas. And these elements of a team canvas are what we call the 6 Ps. So here's an example of what that looks like. So what we do is we take the team on a journey around how they fit into the big picture, why it's so important for them to actually operate as a team. What does a great team look like? And we do some exercises around that and have some fun around that. And then what we do, we get the team to agree what the team purpose is. Why are we here? And it's really important to actually get that nailed down. So I like to do it in a sentence, starting with an active verb and a statement, which is, that clarity of purpose. Then understand what your principles of operation, what are our team values, what's important for us to remember to do in terms of how we operate together. And then work out, understand what people's strengths are. So this is about building the trust, understanding and relationships. So again, facet 5, or understanding what makes people mad, sad or glad, or whatever tools you use at the moment to understand what people need to, in terms of be their best. We often get them to use do an exercise to create a user manual. Those user manuals are a one-page document that says, this is how to get the best out of me. This is not what to do, this is how to communicate with you. Those sort of exercises are really good, and we can share lots of ideas about how to do that. And then what we do is we then work out what are our team processes. What's our meeting routines? Do we have a daily huddle? Do we have a little buzz session? Do we have a monthly meeting or a weekly meeting, or do we have a quarterly sort of get together for a couple of days? And we actually agree how we're going to work together, how we're going to communicate, how we make decisions, what's our decision making framework, what are our working practices, and we actually agree that, and actually agree how we're going to do that as a team. Then we make sure that we understand what is it we need to deliver in terms of outcomes, in terms of how will we know we're succeeded as a team. And then the final bit is what is it we want to be famous for? What's a descriptive, like how would we want other people to actually describe that? And what we do is over a period of a day or a couple of days, we actually start to ground this down and articulate it in a way, and then that becomes our team canvas, our agreement, if you like, as a team, where we've got a common purpose, we've got a common set of values, we know what our goals are, we know what our outcomes are, we understand how to get the best out of each other, we're playing to position, we know our roles and responsibilities, we know our way of working, our processes, and we have that sense of pride and understanding of what we're trying to create in terms of a team brand. And we've done this for many, many years now. Whenever we do it, team performance will actually improve. Now, of course, once you've done this, all you've done is actually set your team up for success. You obviously need to now sustain that high performance. So this is where you need to turn the agreement into ways of working. And this is what we call the drumbeat of the team. So the drumbeat of the team really is the meetings you have, because now we're working certainly in a virtual world and more remote, is that we're not going to be in the same environment all the time. So it's really important to set this up, but then agree what's our meeting routines, how are we going to actually work together, when are we going to work together, when don't we need to work together, what are the individual work packages we can do, and we can actually adjust that effectively. So that's a team canvas, and we'll actually give you a tool to actually run that workshop and show you how to do that and give you examples of what a good team canvas looks like. I'm always reticent sharing examples because you need to develop yours. And the final thing I want to share with you today really is about sustaining high performance. So this is where you as a leader need to become a really good coach. Obviously, you need to do your one-to-ones, and I'm not a big fan of appraisal systems and formal appraisal approaches. The annual appraisal, all that rubbish needs to go. And what we need to do is to have ongoing conversations in the moment. So managing, I call it managing by wandering around, and you can do that virtually, by the way, as well. But that's just spending time with people and coaching them, developing them, removing the blockers, asking them how they feel, what's on their mind, and supporting them. But also doing more team sessions where we actually start to review and learn. So this is one of our models we use for learning to help teams to sustain high performance. So we agree some action, so action happens over a month or so. We get together and we spend some time reviewing about what went well, what could have been better, and we look at these levels of outcomes, outputs, activity, methods, behaviors, and feelings. And the big difference you're going to get is around the feelings, behaviors, and methods, because that's where real change, that's what I call the how stuff. The what bit is the activity, the outputs and outcomes, and it's the bit, the last three at the bottom there are really important to actually get in there and start to understand how people are feeling, because your feelings are going to drive your behaviors, the behaviors will drive the methods will drive the activity, which will get the outputs and outcomes. So it makes sense, literally, to spend time to create an environment where people trust in each other to be able to say how they're feeling. So you might be getting great outcomes, but people are exhausted. So, okay, if that's the case, why is that happening, and what can we do about it? So once you've collected that data from the review, you can then start to use theory and tools and techniques to help you to understand why that's actually happening. And once you understand why that's happening, then you can start to do the corrective action, which is about what are we going to stop doing, what are we going to start doing, and what we're going to continue doing as a team. And this cycle starts to operate in an effective way. That's when you'll actually start to sustain high performance and actually start to grow and develop as a team. So lots to cover. I know we want to spend a bit of time here sharing with some thoughts and ideas about your questions. So just to summarize, to pull it together, what will we cover today? So first of all, we know the context has changed. Digital technology is changing it rapidly. We're in a world that is disruptive. It's volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, and diversity is playing a big play in how we operate as well. We know that's impacting on us as leaders, and what worked in the past is not going to work anymore. So that's why we're struggling with what we're doing. So we need to change what we're doing. We know that we've been educated for a world that doesn't exist anymore. So we need to start to relearn, I guess, unlearn first, and then relearn new ways of operating. We know that we need to decode leadership and make it really simple and create a model, a framework, a manifesto that we can use and turn that into a way of operating from a process point of view. We need to lead ourselves really effectively, and that's an ongoing journey throughout our life. And we also need to have a team canvas in place to actually set our team up for success. And then we need to then sustain high performance by creating coaching environment, conversations, and a review process or to drive performance. So there's my thoughts and ideas. Lots for you to think about and go away and think about in terms of what you can do as a leader. Really keen to pick up your questions and thoughts and ideas and answer those the best I can.
Wow, thank you. That was some really good information there, and I'll certainly be using that, Graham, for my team. So the guys that are helping us on this webinar better watch out. So that was fantastic. We have had a lot of questions come through on the chat, so I'll pick up on a few of those. So if we start with the first one from Tamsin, she asks, what are your thoughts on the role of meetings in leading teams? Often leaders / managers seem to be one end of the spectrum, meetings for every occasion versus avoiding meetings as much as possible.
Okay, great question. I think one of the things to realize as a leader that meetings are a really important part of operating as a team. Quite often teams come together to solve a problem, so you need to be really good as a leader to run meetings. And it's something that we've developed over the years around the fact that often people move into a leadership role and they've never had any training or development around how to run a meeting effectively. So I'm not a big fan of having meetings for the meeting's sake, but I think meetings are designed to happen when they should happen. And I think one of the things that tends to happen, why meetings tend to be so rubbish, is that people don't think about the fact that the most important thing about a meeting is what happens after the meeting. So my first protocol is, do I really need this meeting? Obviously, in your team canvas and the 6Ps approach, we've actually agreed what are the meetings we need. What are the types of those meetings? So, example, you have a 30-minute buzz session. That's not around tackling big issues. It's around really checking in with people about how they feel. Then you might have a monthly 2-hour session and maybe a quarterly day or 2-day session. So agreeing the different types of meetings you have are really important. Where it all goes wrong, I think, is when we operate in the old world, where we have managers who aren't comfortable with direction, autonomy, and support, and they have meetings which I call them either offload meetings, i.e. they want to offload tasks to you, or they're checkup meetings where people sit around and they have to go through a presentation on all the things they've done. As a leader, I don't need to know what you've done. I need to know what's stopping you being successful going forward. So I think there's a number of things there, I guess. Yes, I think they're really important. Yes, you have to agree what they are, but they have to be really designed, conducted, and run in the most effective way to actually cause something to happen afterwards. What do I want people to feel like at the end of the meeting? What do people want to go and do at the end of the meeting? Is this an information sharing meeting, or is it actually a decision making meeting? So I think it's an and is the answer. I think you can't be either end of the spectrum. I think it's wrong to say we'll never have meetings, but I think it's also wrong to have a meeting for meeting's sake. You've got to find the blend that's right for you. So in a new team, for example, I'd probably have more meetings more regularly until the team are proving to me that it can perform without me having the meeting. So I guess it's a complex answer, I guess, but I think it's the key thing is you've got to be really good at meeting them and actually designing them.
And the next one, question from Thea. John Cotter says not to waste time with people who are opposed to change in his book Our Iceberg is Melting, but how can we do that if they are a key stakeholder?
Okay, again, that's a really great question. I've just actually finished before this webinar. I've just finished another webinar on thriving on change, and my answer for that is obviously you need to be really good at stakeholder management, and that's of course three things really. You need to identify who the stakeholders are. The second thing is how do I engage the stakeholders, and the third thing is then how do I manage them. I can remember when I left the military and joined the corporate world, sat in a project meeting and being mentored by a project guy, and he's saying, Graham, you've got to understand is that we need to identify who are the people who are betting on you to fail in this project. And I think, what do you mean? We all work for the same company. Surely we'll want to be successful. And obviously that's when the politics and stuff comes into play. And I think for me is in terms of, I don't think you could ignore people who don't want to change. I don't think John's right in that. I think I would rather obviously work with the people who are willing to change. But what I would do as a leader, I'd be saying to myself, how do I engage with them? And how do I build the mindset and the energy inside them so they realize they need to change? So I think through influencing techniques, through building awareness and desire, then you can actually start to educate people and change their mindset so they realize they need to change. I don't think we spend enough time building that awareness and desire. We just tend to go, right, we're going to change. And I see it all the time in conferences where the leadership team have gone through a process and understand the need for change, and then they're communicating what we're going to do to the audience. The audience are going, well, why do we need to change? I'm quite happy with what we're doing. So I think the answer to that is you can't ignore them. You've got to get them on board and obviously build your guiding coalition and build, in John's concept, build that guiding coalition of people who are, the change agents, I call them, get them on board. But you still got to tackle the people who aren't. And normally I find is there haven't been enough time including them early on in the process, but they can be unaware of the need for change. So you've got to educate them and change their mind. So change happens with a change of mindset.
Fabulous. I'm conscious we're running out of time, but there's quite a good one come through that covers a couple of the others. It's a question from Paul. He recently returned to managing a previous team, but with some new staff members, and he's really feeling the difference in relationships. With the majority working from home, any advice on how to develop a productive culture?
Okay, so with you're going back to a new team and new members, it's a new team. So you've got to go right back to the start and make sure people have a collective purpose. I think I would certainly run a 6Ps workshop with them. Obviously you can do that virtual as well, and just go through and as a team have that discussion and dialogue about what does good look like for us, what does a great team look like, use examples of other teams that are really successful either outside your organization or in your organization, and then start to really spend time as a team agreeing how you're going to work together. So go through the whole purpose, your values, your team principles, and really think about what the processes are, get rid of things that you don't happen. I think it's really important is that you're almost like gone back a few steps, haven't you? You've got to go through that journey again to build a team. And my view of that is that you almost like need to build your team, so you're making yourself redundant as a leader. And what normally happens, you get to that point where the team's operating in such a great way, either you move or they move, or you then go back, and it's like a cycle. So I would say the starting point would be go back and spend some time getting people to understand who they are. So use some tools or techniques. There's loads of psychometrics and stuff you can do out there. Use some of the team building activities you can use just to see how people operate. But spending time together in an environment where, whether it's virtual or face to face, is to just get to know each other. So a great exercise I love is to ask people individually to write down on a piece of paper what makes them mad, what makes them sad, and what makes them glad in terms of how the team operate, and then to share that, and then to think about, well, okay, what can we do to make sure that we don't do the mad and sad stuff, but we actually operate in the glad way. So I think spending time on the relationships is really important, because what we don't want to do is get caught up on that dead body syndrome where we spend too much time on deliverables and not enough on the relationships. I think you've got to get the balance between the two. Then I always say, start with the relationships first. Once the relationship's in place, then you can really focus on deliverables. That'll be my advice.
Fabulous. Well, we're just in the nick of time there, really, so I don't think we've got time for any more questions, unfortunately. Thank you to everybody who submitted a question. Sorry we've not got through every one of them. Potentially we could put a few of them, Graham, to you and email those out to people. Just
so
answers.
So what I'm more than happy, if you're going to share the slides and information, then if you send me all the questions there, what I'll do is I'll do a response, and I will send it out to people and signpost you to the right tools and techniques to do that. And we'll obviously share these slides with you and really help you to really start to think about how you lead in a more effective way in today's world and the context we're in, but how you then set up your team success. So more than happy to share ideas and thoughts about how to do that.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Graham. Thank you to everybody who's attended. This webinar is being recorded, so we will also send with all of the bits and pieces the recording alongside it, so you can watch it again or share it with peers or anyone who you may find it useful. We have lots of regular webinars at Reed. Do keep an eye out on our social media channels to find the next webinar that's up and coming. And thank you very much once again to Graham for joining us and for all your advice and thought leadership, really.
Been a pleasure. Loved it.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.